One Piece chapter 1187. It's titled The Root of the Problem, okay? And the cover page, we got Reiju scolding the naughty swans and protecting the ugly duckling. We all know who the ugly duck is, right? It's a bunch of smoke birds. I know some people wonder, why is she not a bird too? Well, because the ducks aren't her actual family, okay? They're not the actual Vinsmokes. She probably found a family of ducks walking around the Vinsmoke property, walking around the Vinsmoke land, you know, with the German kingdom, right? And it was the same scenario she grew up with at home. Boom. There you go. That's simple. Anyway, so the chapter is starting up where the last one, you know, picked up from, or ended off, I should say, right? Luffy delivering that punch straight to Imu's face. He knocked him out. He sent him flying. He got the hockey punch, okay? Stretchy arm, hockey punch. And Luffy doesn't look that much bigger. I know people were saying, oh, I think Luffy probably made himself bigger. No, did you forget? He can make his fist big. So yeah, if Imu, you know, obviously he made himself bigger to fight Loki. He wasn't as big as Loki, but he made himself a little bigger. Luffy just has to make his fist a little big. He could punch him square in the face, right? Anyway, so Imu's flying away. He sends these omen balls, these little flames, the ball of flame at Loki and Luffy. He sends two of them. But Luffy and Loki are having a little back and forth, right? You know, you only got that damage in because I weakened him first. Luffy said, oh, you're hurt. And, you know, Loki's like, you don't stop worrying about me. Who do you think you're talking to? In the middle of him talking, the fireballs are also speaking, right? And they say, oh, we're supposed to go to his chest where the sword hit, right? This is what they say. We're supposed to go where the sword hit, right to his chest. And the fireballs go to Loki's chest, and Imu activates this bell-shaped omen. And when he makes it ring, when he makes the bell ring in his hand, it summoned a blade, the blade of hatred. Okay, stigma. I forgot if that's... No, the other one, it was the blade of judgment. This is the blade of hatred. So he might have 3 blades. He might have a countless number of blades. Who knows? Loki gets sent flying away by a giant omen sword, the blade of hatred that pierced him in his chest. Yeah. So, and by the way, let me just say before I read this chapter on Viz, I know I'm releasing it when the official release came out, but this time I actually did read the other ones too, because I've been getting tired of the Viz translations. The Viz translations, I'm reading something and it feels kind of awkward. So I kind of remembered, oh yeah, I used to read the other ones, right? TC, whatever it's called. I used to read them. And I do like them better sometimes. So I like to read them both, so I might as well read it early and then read it officially. That's what I've been doing. So we get to the scene where Brook and the rest of the crew are trying to break Gonko out of the ice. And, you know, nothing's working on it, and Frankie suggests that, oh, this is probably diamond or something, right? Now, maybe that's just a joke, but I think this is Oda probably giving us the likeness of this ice. He's comparing it to diamond because not only in a lot of and mainly, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but it's mainly in a lot of the Japanese fantasy and media, right? Like Final Fantasy, for example, or other, you know, fiction fantasy things, right? Whenever a person uses a diamond dust attack or some sort of diamond attack, it's usually some sort of ice move, right? Like a high tier level of ice move, right? So the fact that Frankie's comparing the ice to diamond, and the fact that if somebody was able to get a small piece of Ragnar's ice and Ragnar gave it to them, it would never melt. It would always stay cold, and it would look like it would act like a diamond almost. It is like a diamond at that point. I'm almost thinking Nami might ask Ragnar to make her a bunch of small pieces of ice so she can like have them like gems and diamonds, because they'll never melt or anything like that. Imagine that. You could use a Ragnar ice cube in your cup of water and you can always have cold water because you have an infinite ice cube. It never gets smaller, never melts. It wouldn't merge with any of the other liquids that you pour. You could just wash it off, put it in another cup. That's crazy. But anyway, I'm talking about some random shit now. Let me get back to the chapter. Anyway, so they can't break the ice. And Loki is seen flying straight at the ice. His back hits the ice because they're standing on top of this tree branch. And Loki comes flying, hits the ice. And Ragnar flies into the air and ends up landing on top of the ice cube. Now, I know a lot of people were kind of confused about, like, okay, how come, I heard a lot of people say that Oda drawing the scale for the characters is kind of inconsistent, but I think your understanding of the scale is a little more inconsistent than Oda's portrayal of these characters on scale. Because what am I talking about? This chapter right here, when Loki is flying and I see Luffy, he's super far away, right? Luffy is super far away. You see him in the top of this panel, standing on a branch, yelling for Loki. Loki is all the way over there, but he's still big from Luffy's perspective, right? He hit the ice cube on top of the tree branch and slid down the tree branch. Now he's sitting on the ground, okay? He's no longer up there. So he's sitting on the ground. A lot of people said, how did he just change size? Wasn't his head near the ice cube in the first panel? Now in this panel, he's lower. Yeah, because he slid down the tree branch after he hit the ice, right? So the ice starts melting because Ragnar bounces off the ice. And Shuri is most likely going to get freed next chapter. But at the same time, what's going to happen to her? We're going to have to see if she's going to wake up herself fully. I think she will, because Imu is currently here and he's not consciously trying to control or manipulate her mind, right? And she's not Dome Reversate right now inside the ice. So her personality most likely will be normal. So this gets into another question, how do these things work? I feel like with the amount of different things we've seen, it's been kind of consistent. Oda's been showing us different sides and all of the different ways these things work. So for some people, it might feel like it's inconsistent. It might feel like it used to work this way, but now it's working that way. When in reality, it works this way and it works that way. Okay, for example, with the ripping the God's Knights apart, the Holy Knights apart, I had to really think about it, and now I've come to the conclusion, because before I would question, okay, how come Oda's changed the way they get attacked? Before, it seemed like Gabon told them the only way to hurt them is with the Conqueror's Haki. But if you actually really think about what he said, he's telling them that's the only way to stop their regeneration, right? So you can hurt them with other means because their bodies aren't made of steel, right? That's why in this new chapter we have a direct reference to that, where Killingham tells Sanji toughness and immortality are completely different. Killingham doesn't have to be tougher than Sanji physically. That's why Sanji, who's tough, can still hit him hard enough to cut his head off like he can do to normal people. Sanji can kick normal people's heads off all day if he wanted to. He can do that to normal people, but they're not. If Sanji and Jinbei and Frankie alone, if they grab somebody's by both arms, they can rip them in half probably, right? They're strong. They can rip strong arm left versus the karate grip. They're ripping somebody in half. So they most likely just ripped Killingham apart. Okay, and I know it sounds like I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm still talking about Shuri. So, long story short, Killingham, he got ripped apart, but he was still able to regenerate eventually because they didn't stop his regeneration. Okay, the concept of his body being pulled apart and them keeping them separate, that's something they thought of creatively to deal with somebody who just heals in the first place. Like, okay, you can heal, but what if I don't destroy your head? What if I just cut it off? You can't regrow a new head if your head is not destroyed, right? So logically, they just cut their head off and kept them apart from each other, right? Boom, that's how that works. So we know with Shuri, she's currently not Dome Reverse, so she's not gonna regenerate like rocks, and her personality is not flipped. She hasn't been flipped, like in mind and you know, in everything. Her thoughts, she'll probably wake up Princess Shuri. The Mark of the Abyss, yes, it is on her, but if you remember with Harold, it has to be activated. Harold had the Mark of the Abyss, and he was sitting in the throne room until Emu said, you know what, I'm gonna make you do it. And then Harold's body started moving on its own, while he was still, you know, with his own thoughts. And then eventually he let it fully take him over, and his thoughts even started to change. Like he said, I started to think of myself as a god. His mind started changing. Gunko, the mind that we see, the girl, the mindset, that's Gunko, when she has been already taken over and, you know, kind of flipped since the day we saw her with Brooke. She's become Gunko, right? Even her words against the king, that's not the stuff that she really means or feels. It's because she was flipped, right? So again, I think she's gonna wake up normal until the inevitable reactivation of the Mark of the Abyss. Or maybe she tells them about the Mark of the Abyss and has Brooke cut her arm off, you know, or she cuts her own arm off. Who knows? It might happen like that, because we see with Shanks, that's most likely enough to free you. But then again, Shanks had like he had a shallower mark, so we don't know how deep hers goes. Like, does it affect her whole body at this point? Well, you know, we don't know. But those are possibilities right there. So we got Luffy standing up in this bush in the tree, looking over, still looking at, you know, where Loki flew off to. And he notices the flame on his shoulder is kind of being activated. And he takes the cloak off and throws it. And he starts running toward Emu. And while he's running toward Emu, we hear the drums, doom da da da, doom da da da. We hear the drums going off, okay? We hear them, and the Emu standing there, it zooms in on him. We hear the drums going off. We already know what's gonna happen. And by the way, I think earlier Luffy said, whoa, this guy looks way scarier up close. So, yeah, he is like, he's a menace. Like his presence feels threatening. He's a menace just from looking at him. He's like, yo, this guy is different from anybody. You know, usually Luffy looks at weird people, he doesn't care, but he's like, yo, this guy looks scary. Yeah, he's spooky. So let me try to speed the video up, okay? We're at Team Zoro versus Killingham, and I should have said this earlier, but Oda has been like, I always like Oda's paneling, right? Oda has a lot of good paneling, and he's really good at paneling. And I know a lot of people heard his new quote about what he said about not wanting to make this like a battle shonen. So a lot of people say, oh, One Piece is not a battle shonen. No, you're wrong. One Piece is a battle shonen, okay? You're misunderstanding, or you misheard the quote that he said. He's speaking from the time and in his change in perspective of, at a certain point in time, he stopped trying to do the typical battle shonen things in his battle shonen for the sake of longevity and not exhausting the battle shonen trope, right? He said that he knows about Dragon Ball. Everybody knows about Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball has been long competed against in the battle shonen category when it comes to manga getting serialized. Most people back in the day, even JoJo creator and even Oda himself, when they're getting their foot in that door, they have to compete with Dragon Ball to some extent. It's just there. Even if you personally don't have anything against, you don't have anything against Dragon Ball, right? That's not your personal goal, but just being in that world and that being like the new standard for battle shonen, and it's doing the best at it, and it's making that new standard for everybody. And if you're not up to this par, up to this level, you're not a good battle shonen at this point, right? Quote unquote, right? So people were always naturally competing with Dragon Ball. He said at a certain point in time, he's seen so many people try to compete with them, and they're going on for long runs, but they just can't keep going with it. So for him, the way to make his battle shonen last long is to not just do battle shonen stuff all the time. That's why he's putting that adventure in there. He's putting this world building, this story, all this stuff. And my point in even going off and saying that is this Killingham versus Zoro fight reminded me of that, because I am seeing right now Oda is tapping in to his battle shonen skill category, right? Because battle shonen is shonen in general, right? Shonen is shonen in general. But battle shonen is a specific type where you kind of like trying to choreograph your fights and you know, highlight the action more. And Oda right now, not only is he doing this action thing, but the way he's doing it so tastefully and so artistically, right? With the paneling in the frame that he has right here with Zoro and Killingham standing off, this paneling right here is nice. That the anime staff will not have a hard time at trying to get this down scene for scene when they're animating it and the camera switching around and all that, because Oda is kind of handling this like a movie. You know, it's like a sense of atmosphere with each of these shots. Even with Killingham and Sanji and them standing on the roof after they clash and they start talking before they fight again, and it's raining and Sanji's lighting a cigarette before he goes into the fight and he's observing the battle. This is typical shonen stuff again, because everybody's having their own fight. Loki was fighting the big bad villain first. He gets KO'd, and then now it's Luffy's turn. This is Oda is bringing out his battle shonen roots like he does frequently, because you know it's still in him, and this is still a battle shonen at the end of the day, but it's not your typical battle shonen because he's throwing his twists and all that sort of stuff in it, right? So yeah, I know I kind of just went on a rant there, but I thought the paneling in this chapter was so nice. It's so nice. Why would I not mention it in this video? Like, I'm gonna try to hurry this video up because my allergies are fucking me up, okay? So, and they're talking this stuff, you know, I don't think your guy's coming back. He's gonna be dead, right? And they're talking this stuff, and they start fighting, and he launches the vine at Zoro. Zoro's clashing the vine. Now, you know, I think something interesting that will come from this fight is if one of Zoro's swords chipped, or like one of his swords like had a nick in it, not a chip, but like a little nick in the blade. He realized, yo, my blade just got a little nicked. It's not as sharp. He has to sharpen it later now. If he realizes like, yo, my blade just got nicked, it's a small little indentation in there. He's gonna have to like try to get a black blade in the middle of this fight, or upgrade and focus his haki in that sort of fashion, so he can clash with this guy who just got a Maki boost, right? And I don't know, I just got the idea because Zoro's immediately clashing with his vines, and I feel like these vines that are going to be super hard, and I think they're a different color now if I'm not mistaken. They might have been black before, I don't know, but I feel like Zoro might be in that sort of situation. He might be in that sort of situation. Summer said, you don't realize how on top of our game we are, and Zoro has exclamation points over his head while he's blocking the vine. So I think this could be a small sign, and Zoro's blades are shaking. This is a small sign of like, whoa, Zoro's feeling his power difference, right? He's gonna be able to see it. So we get to Sanji versus Killingham, and like I was saying, he lights the cigarette. Boom, it's so cinematic, so nice. Zaza towering over the village, and Killingham talking his stuff, right? They're getting destroyed. Sanji is going point by point. And I like this. This is like a movie or something, right? This is some movie stuff. The character sitting back, kind of analyzing in his head, point by point, what the problem is, what he needs to do about it, literally what he's doing, right? And then he throws the cigarette, starts handling it. He clashes with Killingham, okay? In the middle of saying all this, I'm seeing the women cry. They're taking the kids. I can't help them because they're fighting a bigger woman. I can't hit that big woman. So I'm no good over there. I need to fight this guy. He summoned the big woman. This is how I end it all. Boom. They sitting on the roof, like I said. You see the panel, man? It's nice. It's nice. Imagine that in the anime, the camera cuts. the rain dropping, like it's gonna be amazing. Sanji on the roof, he's gonna have to awaken his inner Germa, right? I said his inner Germa. He gonna have to like just throw everything aside, turn into a cold killer, like he said in Wano. He's gonna have to turn into that cold killer to unlock this conqueror's haki. Because Gabon, you know, he's having a flashback with Gabon, and you know, and this is funny because a lot of people said that everybody was kind of like exaggerating. Now I understand sometimes people will drag stuff in One Piece. They'll do a leap in logic. But if you've been reading One Piece for this long, you haven't known by now, little things like that are often a little piece of foreshadowing, like something is going to get mentioned again. Somebody's going to mention what was spoken about, like, or just whatever the scenario may be. It might not even be the same scenario with somebody speaking to somebody off screen and we know it has to be significant, right? It might not even be that same scenario, but like Oda does stuff like this all the time. So the fact that this is coming back now and Sanji's remembering that Gabon told him he has the potential for it, but for some reason he's like, he has, in the English, in the Viz translation, he says you possess a streak of masochistic instability. So they're saying he's like a masochist, like he's abusing himself on and off for some reason. He's like fighting himself, I guess is what they're trying to say that he's saying. And in the other translation, the kind of fan translation, he says that you seem to be burdened with painful uncertainty. So I guess in the fan translation, it kind of points more at the idea that Sanji, in his mind, there's something that he's been painfully conflicted with, something that he's been wavering on, the ideal. And I think it's kind of, with the fan translation, it seems like he's more like that he's referring to the idea that Sanji had back in Wano, like I was saying earlier, with him being conflicted about whether or not he's the type of killer Luffy needs him to be and whatnot, right? And if he has to like lose his heart to be the proper wing for Luffy, right? And all that sort of stuff. And I think he's conflicted about that, whether or not he wants to be full-on Germa and accept who he is and use that full Germa power, or he wants to still remain human to some extent. Okay, and then he also finishes the sentence off with, you must be a king yourself if you truly wish to make Luffy the king of the pirates, right? And of course, the whole king thing is said in both, you must be a king too if you want to make Luffy the king of the pirates. They're talking about in his mindset, the way he carries himself, the idea of, it makes me think of Berserk, right? The idea of, and you probably don't watch or read Berserk, but I'll try to summarize it for you. The ideal of this man you're following as a leader, he has his own goals and dreams. He doesn't follow anybody. You're following him, but he's not going to fully respect you or see you as his peer or equal because you don't have your own dreams and desires. You're just simply following him. Right, you're just following him. You're just another follower, which, okay, he might appreciate that and everything else in his own way, but he truthfully just can't see you as an equal because you're not an equal, right? That's like how Luffy would see the other people like Law and Kid more of like an equal because they're captains of their own respective crews and they're all chasing that same desire, and you know, they have their own big goal in this world. Sanji, somebody like Zoro, who's standing next to Luffy, has a solid thing that he wants to achieve outside of that. He's even said, they've drawn the line with Zoro multiple times, like, I will kill you if I think you're losing sight of your own dream. If I think you're not the dude that I became friends with the first day when, you know, blah, blah, blah. If you're not him no more and you all of a sudden you're wussing out, you don't have your own dreams anymore, you just want to, nah, I'm killing you. We're going to stop this whole journey right now. So like, it's the whole same thing, right? Sanji is going to have to not leave the crew like Guts did, but he's going to have to finally, in his own mind, accept something. He's going to have to start to see things different. Like, he can't just be fine with being in this place that's like not on par with Luffy's level of ambition and stuff like that, right? And Luffy's level of want. He needs to heighten that. And it might be through the idea of like will he solidify his Germanness? And like all we know, his only dream is to, you know, the all blue. Other than that, his dream is the other goal of his is to like support Luffy in his dream. He doesn't really have any other goals, so I don't know if it's gonna manifest in Sanji having some new goal or solidify. Are they gonna bring the all blue back up? I don't know. Or will he just simply kind of come to terms with his German nature and the idea of him being German, right? Who knows? But Oda again with the final panel, he's setting us up with like shonen style, and even further than that, it's like a typical old-fashioned showdown. This is face-off. Like you got the versus Imu, Nerona, Saint Neroma. Oh my God, Saint Nerona Imu versus Monkey D. Luffy. Okay, the king of the world versus the emperor of the sea. I thought those were two interesting parallels. Like, yeah, in that way, the whole, you know, you must become a king. In that sense, Luffy is already a king in that sense. And then his, you know, he's also the emperor of the sea, quite literally, right? And then Imu, the king of the world, is a king in his own sense and right? So it's crazy. I like this setup. And he calls him Joy Boy. Art thou here, Joy Boy, or whatever he says, I don't know. And Luffy says, hey, I'm not Joy Boy, stop calling me that shit, I'm Luffy. So will Imu start to like see Luffy as his own individual? Like, yo, I'm not gonna look at him as the person in the past. Maybe he won't. It depends on how much of an impression that he makes on him. We're gonna see. Next chapter, we might be in for a lot of lore drops with Imu talking about a bunch of different shit. We might not see it all from Gunko's eyes. Gunko might not be the only one to tell us some things about Imu. Like I've been saying, I think she might. But Imu himself might start talking about Joy Boy in the Void Century now. And he might even get back to Nika. I don't know. We gotta see. It's a lot going on. But that's it for me. I'm out. If I have anything else to add, I'll put it in the comments down below.